When I was a little girl in France, my dad was a musician and he used to travel with his orchestra. He used to go to Japan about once a year. Now, when he traveled, he'd always bring a gift back for me. And I must say that the gifts from Japan were always the most fascinating ones, because I'd never seen those things before. Now, we had our little ritual. I would stand by him as he emptied his suitcase, and when the suitcase was empty, he would hand me the gift. And I remember that feeling of curiosity, that feeling of wanting to know but not knowing. It was, every time for me, it was an experience of stepping into the unknown. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but the unknown is all over us. It's everywhere. I mean, you and I feel pretty confident that the sun will rise tomorrow, but do we actually know 100% for sure? It's pretty fair to say that the world that we live in right now would have been rather difficult to imagine for us 20 or 30 years ago. And it's also pretty fair to say that it's difficult to know for us what the world will be in 5 to 10 years' time. So we have to live in the unknown. We have to accept that. We now live in an era of negative interest rates. It means that you go to the bank, you put your cash in an account, you come back 1 month later, you have less cash than you had when you arrived. How long is that going to last? We don't know. Slow economic growth or absence of economic growth. Some central banks are now thinking of switching to fiscal policies instead of interest rate-led policies, because interest rates are not doing anything, are not helping the economies to grow. When and how are economies going to grow again? We are witnessing the most amazing concentration of wealth in the world. There's a rising tide of inequality in the world that we live in. In 2014, Oxfam International published a report, and it came out just before Davos. Now, in that report, one of the findings was, okay, hold on to your chairs, the 85 richest people in the world own as much wealth as the 3.5 billion poorest. Where is this leading us? We don't know. We have polarized political discourse. Look at the American presidential election. Look at Brexit. Look at the rise of extreme right political parties in many countries. Where is this tide of discontent taking us? We don't know. There's job uncertainty, not only in terms of employment, but in terms of the future of work. How will our children make a living? We don't know. There's education uncertainty. How can we educate kids now to live and be active in the world in the next 30 to 40 years when we don't know what the world will be like in just 5? We don't know. We're facing the most acute and complex environmental issues that humanity has ever faced. You know, climate change, air pollution, water pollution. I'm going to take some examples from China because this is home for me. In 2011, the Chinese government released a paper, and in this paper they said that 43% of government-monitored rivers in China are so polluted that they are unfit for human contact. We're not even talking about human consumption. We're talking about human contact. You can't touch the stuff. Where is this leading us to? We don't know. My daughter spent her last year of high school in Beijing last year, and I went to visit her quite regularly. A lot of time, we couldn't go out because the air was so bad. You couldn't see the building across the street from your hotel. You know, now the Chinese government is really very proactive in taking steps to find remedies, and in fact, I think I'm not wrong to say that they are the first investor in alternative energy in the world. But this is not a problem that's going away next week. This is not even a problem in need of a solution. This is a dilemma. And dilemmas don't have solution, because when you take somewhere, you have to give somewhere else. And what you have to give in this particular case is economic growth. Right? So I'm taking China as an example because I live there and it's familiar to me, but this is not a Chinese issue. This is a planetary issue. Now, how do we get countries that are completely different stages of their economic growth to work together and to find a way to move forward on this? We don't know. What are the medium-term or long-term social, health, or economic consequences of this? We don't know. We live in a world that futurologist Bob Johansen described as the most volatile, the most uncertain, the most complex, and the most ambiguous that we've ever known. It's more and more obvious that we are now in the unknown. Now, one last example, closer to home for me, because it's in my industry, the beauty industry. The rise of consumerism in China. Now, China is the most populated country on earth. 1 person out of 5 on this planet is Chinese. Right? It's a country that was lifted out of poverty in less than 30 years. It's an amazing feat. Right? But it also brings with it a price to pay. I recently met a young Chinese girl, I think she was around 19 years old, who was just coming back from Korea, where she had facial reconstruction surgery done, plastic surgery. Right? I asked her about it. She said, look, it's the most painful experience that I've ever had in my whole life, but I'm so happy I did it. I'm so happy because it's going to change my life. And what she meant by change my life was not, oh, you know, it's going to give me more confidence and it's going to boost my self-esteem. No, 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 no. She was literally meaning change my life. Better job, higher salary, more promotions, better opportunities in life, and better marriage prospects. Right? So in a consumeristic society, people have a lot of social pressure on them. Right? And this is just an example. There's a small example of what's happening in China right now. What is the future holding for those people and for the rest of the world? We don't know. So I think by now you're getting the gist of where I'm going with this, right? We're living in this world where, you know, we know nothing and we don't know what the future is holding for us, and the pace of change is increasing and it's the fastest that it has ever been, and that creates a lot of challenges, and I've just mentioned a few. Now the thing is, the unknown also opens the door to a lot of opportunities. When I arrived in Tokyo 2 days ago, I had dinner with my friend Steve and his wife Jennifer. Now Steve is American, but he's lived in Tokyo for a long time. And he was telling me, he was speaking to me about the joy of not knowing. And he said, look, I'm 55 years old. I look back on my life and, you know, I was always trying to achieve something. You know, I went to school, I did well with my exams, got to college, got my goal. Got to college, graduated from college, very good, got my goal. After college, got a job, got my goal. I got married, I got children, raised my kids. And he says, now, I'm in my mid-50s, and I'm just discovering the joy of not knowing what's next. He says, on Sunday morning, I wake up and I have no bloody idea what I'm going to do that day. And I have no bloody idea when or where I'm going to retire. And I have no bloody idea where I'm going to be next year. Right? So there's a lot of opportunities in the unknown for us to redesign ourselves, to redefine who we are. Now, my question is, in this context of the unknown, and in this context of the profound transformations that we see happening in Asia, what are the opportunities for Japan to redesign itself? In what areas can Japan become a role model in Asia? And how can Japan actively participate to this profound reshaping that we see happening? Now, I don't have an answer to these questions. I know that there are some very interesting people who are working on that and who have come up with the alternatives. Now, I don't have an answer, but I know one thing. I know that now is the time to ask the question, why? For several reasons. Number one, what China is going through right now, Japan went through many years ago. The meteoric economic rise, the massive creation of wealth, consumerism, been there, done that, right? Now, what insights can Japan share so that the mistakes that were made yesterday are not repeated tomorrow and don't affect the future? Number two, what I see happening in China fundamentally is disconnect. Disconnect from self, disconnect from others, and disconnect from nature. What wisdom can Japan share that will help? Now, number three, I think Japan has a very special place, cultural position between the West and China. As an Asian country, you understand Asian values. And I'm not trying to put all the Asian countries in the same, basket. I'm not trying to do that. But, China is very, very busy trying to adopt values from the West at the moment. Can Japan propose a middle way? So, again, those are questions I have no answer, to. I can't answer that. But as an entrepreneur and as a mother, there's one thing that I know, is that experience is invaluable. And Japan has so much of that to share with the world. So I was maybe 5 or 6, and my dad had just come back from Japan. And I was there standing next to the suitcase, waiting for him to empty it. And he took out a little box. It was not very big, and it was beautifully wrapped. And I remember my heart racing. I really wanted to know what was in this box. And he handed me the box. Opened the box. Now, inside the box, there was a little Seiko digital watch. And the screen was different shades of green. Now, to you and to me today, this sounds like nothing, especially with all the smartphones and everything that we have today. Nobody wears watches anymore. But for the 6-year-old child that I was, it was the most beautiful treasure. And my plea today is for us to never, ever lose touch with that ability, that sense of wonder for life that 6-year-old children can have, so that when our children look into their children's eye, they can still see that wonder for life. Thank you very much.